All right. Hello, everybody. I'm your host, John Rayan, and my guest today on the Always Direct podcast is Augusto Carneiro. Augusto is the owner of Nossa Familia Coffee. Augusto, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, good to be here.
So tell me about your coffee company and how you got started, because it seems like you guys have been in business. Your family has been in business for a very long time.
Yeah, so in some ways we started over 130 years ago in the 1890s when my great-grandfather and his four brothers started planting coffee in Brazil. And so I'm lucky to have this beautiful heritage in my family, and they did very well for themselves and they settled in a really nice area of Brazil for coffee. It's kind of like the Napa Valley for coffee in Brazil. So
Sure.
The quality is there. It's really good. And they were, smart business people. And I think kind of define what sustainability is, which is in our mind in the family is the ability to sustain, so we're not depleting the soil. The idea is that it's this long-term vision. And we're now in our fifth generation of coffee farmers in Brazil. So that's the backstory in Brazil, very, very summarized. And in the late 90s, two of my cousins decided they wanted to be more than coffee farmers. They wanted to promote the family name and differentiate a little bit. It's mostly coffee farmers. They grow the coffee and then they don't know where their coffee ends up. And so they started going after the direct trade model and created an export company. And early 2000, I was here in Portland, finishing my college in engineering, worked for a few years in engineering, didn't like it. And I was visiting Brazil, telling them I was thinking of something different to do. And I was considering, telling them how much people here love coffee. And so, we tied two and two, and that was the beginning of Nossa Familia Coffee.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're it's funny. You're the second engineer this week that I've had on the podcast that they said that I was engineer for a while, and I said no. I had the entrepreneurial spirit, and I needed to get out.
Yep.
It's kind of funny. But so how old were you at the time when you decided to open up this market? At that point, you were selling the coffee, but you weren't actually involved with where it ended up. You weren't vertically integrated with the end result, correct?
Yeah, so the farm, it was it's in my mother's side of the family, and it was my grandpa and uncles doing the work. I would, we would go to the farm for holidays. As a kid, I had zero involvement with that business. I grew up in the city. My dad was an engineering professor. That's probably why I went to engineering school. But always loved. We spent for about 4 months a year at the farm, all the holidays. So I grew up with that heritage and that experience of how awesome the farm was, but decided to go into engineering. Didn't think I was going to go into farming, and so it was 3 years after I was working as an engineer. So it was 2004. I was born in 76. You can do the math there to figure out my age. The main to paint you a picture of where I was in life as far as like launching a business. I was married to my college sweetheart, and we had our first daughter and a son on the way. So, besides two little kids and a busy life getting started with little kids, why not start a business on top of that?
Yeah.
So that's kind of where we were at our stage in life. This was 2004.
All right. So what was your first steps to start bringing it in?
Yeah, so the first thing is I was visiting Brazil, and my cousin's like, why don't you just take some coffee back to Portland? So he gave me a 70-pound box of roasted coffee. This was like roasted and ground in briquettes, because that was how Brazilians were consuming it more. Like very few people had grinders back then. So I brought this coffee and I started giving some away to neighbors and friends, and started selling some. One of the interesting first experiences I had, one of my friends really liked it, so he came back for more, and so I was going to give him another. This was like a 3/4 pound packet, and he was going to hand me $10, and I'm like, I felt really weird taking money away from one of my friends, because growing up in the farm, we'd always take some of the produce and things from the farm and share it with family and friends without the money exchange. So it was interesting. I had to kind of overcome this aversion to
Mental
accepting people's
barrier.
money.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
like I'm not going to have a business if I can't get comfortable taking people's money, which is a fair trade for a product, right?
Yeah,
So yeah, first step was this box, and then I really knew nothing about business. I didn't really have any immediate examples in my life on entrepreneurship, so I felt pretty lost and lonely. This was 2004 is, I think that's still pre-Google, right? So the internet's around, you can do some research. But so I ended up inviting a colleague from college to become a business partner, and so that helped, having somebody else to bounce ideas with. And
hmm
so we each put $400 in to open our first bank account and register the business in August of 2004. And that partnership lasted till about 2010, and then that wasn't going out, so we bought him out. But yeah, there's been a huge evolution since then.
sure. So what's your? I see there was some coffee shops. There's some import export. There's some wholesaling. I'm assuming. What's your majority of your business coming from?
Yeah, so about 75% of our business is what we call wholesale, which now it's a little bit different because of COVID, right? So pre-COVID, 75% was to grocery stores, restaurants, coffee shops, other people that were buying our coffee to either resell it or to make it for other people. The other 25% was a farmer's market stand and then 4 coffee shop locations.
Mm-hmm.
And then pre-COVID, we were doing I don't know, maybe around, let's say, $15,000 to $20,000 a month online, and now that's closer to $50K a month online. So that was a big change. And then we're doing much
Direct to
less
consumers.
retail.
Direct to
Yeah,
consumer. Oh wow, that's the easiest, most profitable model, isn't it? Not the easiest, maybe, but definitely the most profitable, I would assume.
we always, I think we get in trouble in business when we use the word easiest, because it's like the grass is greener. Like, oh wait, we can we can sell coffee for the retail price. This is going to be easy. And then, like anything else, when you dive into it, I'd say we've been successful with e-commerce. We could always be more successful. There's more stuff to do, but it is a rabbit hole. There's so much to learn. There's so many ways to set up your website and so many different platforms and different tie-ins. And then the big thing for us is subscriptions. That's what we're trying to perfect more, to make it a really good experience for our customers, and make it easy and convenient for them to have really good coffee and at a discount. And it's helpful to us because then it's a guaranteed sale.
Yeah, yeah, it's a beautiful website and it's a beautiful farm. Oh my God, that looks like heaven. That
Yeah, I mean, it's coffee farms are kind of like vineyards. Like they're just beautiful because they're usually on hillsides. It's usually very lush and green. It's in warm parts of the world. So if you get a chance to visit a coffee farm, I would take it.
Yeah, yeah, I am going to. Brazil is on my bucket list. I love Brazil. I might go to Brazil in the next couple of years as long as this whole COVID thing starts to clear up a little bit more.
Mhm.
But how has the COVID affected your business here and over there? Has it affected there at all? Because it's a farm, I'm assuming not too much. But how about here?
Yeah, so let's start at the origin. So with the farm, they're more isolated. There was they actually had a recent outbreak. Now at the beginning of COVID, they didn't have anything, but fortunately, it didn't affect too many people. Most people were able to get treated or rest. Um, and then business wise, it didn't affect too much. In Portland, it affected us quite a bit. We went from 45 employees to 15. We had to shut down all our coffee shops to begin with. We had 4 of them, and we have 45 employees, half in retail, running the shops, and the other half helping with roasting, production, sales, marketing, distribution, all of that. So yeah, shutting down the cafes was a tough call, but we had to do it to survive. So it as an entrepreneur, it sucked. It's the hardest thing I've ever gone through. It's the hardest thing for the team. I think there's still some PTSD, and we're feel good to be coming out of it. Now we're back to 35 people, and so ramping up, which feels really great.
So yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm happy that you were able to get out of that situation.
Mm-hmm.
So you had 4, now you closed 2, so you have 2 open.
Yes,
Both of them are in Portland. Also, you had one in Los Angeles.
we do. Yeah, we have one in LA. That one is still closed. That one is inside a building that's still partially empty, and it's a building in the financial district. So we don't know if and when we'll open that back up again. It's a we don't own the location. We are operators there, like the landlord built it, and we run the cafe for them. So we'll have to have a conversation with them here pretty soon to decide if that's going to make sense to embark on again.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you know what? I'm looking at where you're selling to currently, and there's a lot of work. There's a lot of country left over here. A lot of the
Mhm.
U.S. that hasn't been touched yet. I'm assuming, from what I can see on the map.
Yeah, we are a very local company here in Portland, Oregon. I mean, we've been around for a little bit now, starting in 2004. So what is that, like about 17 years? But we started really slow, and so and I didn't start with any external investor money, right? So we had to grow organically. Going to LA was definitely our first foray outside of the area. And it was going well. It was finally profitable. And so we were going to finally recover the investment that we put in there. And then COVID hit. So it's expensive to expand to other parts of the country. It takes time to build awareness of the brand. Um, so we're the focus now as far as expansion is with direct to consumer e-commerce. That way people can try our great product, see what they like, and then we broaden the reach of the company that way.
Yeah, absolutely. So do you sell? Do you guys sell coffee? So you sell to the consumers, of course, but do you sell them in the pods that people are using now with the?
K-cups and such.
Yeah.
We don't, and we've had a few manufacturers approach us. So we've decided. So the machinery for that is in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. The issue for us is the compostability. So the coffee industry already has a decent footprint in the world with all the movement with coffee coming from producing countries to us. So as a company, we've decided that we want it to be as sustainable as possible, and so we purchased this made in the USA coffee roaster that's about 50% more expensive than other coffee roasters, but it has this really amazing engineering behind it that recirculates the hot air in a way that it only uses 20% of the energy that other roasters use. So that's just one example of like a sustainability decision we made. And the K cups, we've recently been pretty excited to hear that there's some companies that are starting to figure out a compostable or biodegradable pod, which is good. And I got really excited that we tested one, but then the quality is still not there. It makes the extraction is really weak. And so it's like, well, we could get some customers doing this, but the coffee is still not tasting right. So for right now, we're in a waiting pattern for the K cups.
Yeah.
And I guess K cups are proprietary, but the cup system,
Yeah.
because the plastic cup, it's just each one you drink generates plastic and waste that we don't as a company we don't want to
It's stupid. It's stupid anyways. I mean, if you really think about it, it makes zero sense. Although I am guilty.
well
I am guilty. I got mad at my wife for bringing it home. I was like, why would you bring this? Such a waste of money. It costs 40 cents a cup of coffee as opposed to whatever. I mean, we seem like silly for doing it. But now, I've kind of gotten used to it, and
Mhm.
it's just now I don't think I can live without it.
Yeah, as humans we love convenience, right?
Sure.
And so like I'm not here to pass judgment, and so I'm not on social media bad mouthing. I'm not going to hang up on you. I'll still be your friend.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
You confessed your coffee sins to me. But it's not for us. But humans like convenience, and so my hope is that market forces will drive innovation, right? So if you have people that want the convenience, but they also want a product that is compostable, there's going to be a market for that, and so as humans that will drive innovation.
Yeah, yeah, and so
So we do have a product that's similar as far as it makes 1 cup of coffee, and it is all compostable. And it's this company we partnered with in California called Steeped. So it's essentially coffee in a tea bag, but it's not a tea bag. It's a little bit bigger because you need more coffee than tea uses, but the whole thing is compostable.
I've
So
seen
we have
that.
on our webpage.
I've
Steeped
seen that
coffee.
from somewhere. I don't know where I've seen that, but I've that's just such a smarter way to. I just don't think they can't create a proprietary way to control it, so that you have to order specifically from that company. I think that's why it's not as mainstream as the other ones are.
Yeah, it's just starting out. It's going well for us. We're gaining more and more traction. We call it our adventure ready coffee because like if you're going to travel and be in a hotel with crappy coffee, you can take that, and all you need is boiling water. If you're going camping, it's really great. So that's been a good 1 cup coffee solution for us.
So being in the coffee business, being a coffee connoisseur, coming from a coffee farm, how do you make your coffee, you yourself personally? Do you do that old school way with the hot water, or do you do it the traditional way with an American coffee maker? What's your what's your go-to coffee?
Yeah, so I like some variety, but I always start with a cup of a medium dark roast at home, whether it's our Todoro's Italian roast or Camilo's organic. Those are the two favorite at home, and mostly because that's what my wife likes. So, and then at home, I for the first cup, I have a brewer. It's called a Technovorm. It's also known as a Mocha Master, and it's in the $300 to $400 range, so it's definitely more than your Mr. Coffee brewer. And what's great about it is it brews coffee at the right temperature and a little bit and at the right time as well. Some of those the off the shelf coffee makers make it too slow, so you over extract the coffee.
Mm.
So I make coffee in a brewer, and then the key elements there is to have a good grinder as well, so you can grind the coffee ideally fresh right before you brew it, and then grind it correctly. A lot of people don't know this, but grinding it very fine will give you a whole different experience than grinding it very coarse. And both are good for different uses. So for so some pro tips here for any type of coffee brewer or even the pour over. You want to think of your coffee as like a consistency of like table salt, that level of coarseness. If you're doing like a Turkish coffee or espresso, then it's more like a powder, right? And then if you're going to do French press or any other immersion type of brewing where the coffee's sitting in the water, like a toddy, like that for cold brew, then you want it to be very coarse.
Mm.
So anyways, I brew with the brewer, and then if I'm at the office, I'll usually make myself a latte at some point in the day. And then the other method that we like to use fairly frequently is the French press, which is nice and convenient and makes a good strong cup of coffee.
How many cups of coffee a day you drink?
I'm trying to cut back a little bit, so I'm probably down to 4 or 5.
Yeah.
And actually, just before this, I threw some. I made coffee and threw it in the like I made some iced coffee and left it in the fridge, and then my wife bought some coconut milk, so I'm doing some coconut milk, coffee, and ice.
Yeah, you have to.
Afternoon dessert and pick me up.
Sure. So, I really want to dive in. So, this channel, we're trying to focus on the entrepreneurial journey, taking that risk, figuring out what did you do to get there to become successful, and specifically on the early days. Okay, so I'm going to ask you a couple of questions and see if you can give us your experience. So, when you first started this business and you took on a partner, so you had 2 guys in the beginning. Did you hire anybody right off the bat, or did you decide to run you two?
Just those two, and so he came on board. Let's say May or so of 2004. We had a bunch of meetings to figure things out. We're both recent graduates within a few years. He was in sales, selling advertising for a local newspaper, and I was in engineering. So luckily, we both already had purchased our first homes, so we owned a mortgage. But that made us it made us bankable, right? We could go to a bank and get a loan. And then we didn't need paychecks right away. But we both kept our day jobs through 2005.
So for almost for a full year.
For a full year. And then he quit his job first. And his wife didn't work at the time because of little kids. So we had to figure out a salary for him. Actually, man, it's been a while. Maybe she did work as a teacher, but they needed, some supplement to. So he was the first to get a paycheck, but like we're talking $1,500 a month, right? Very, very minimal. And then my first paycheck from the company was January of 2007. So I worked, 2004, 5, and 6, no salary. And I kept my day job through May of 2005. When I quit, my wife is a nurse, and so her paycheck was enough to pay our mortgage and sustain the family. But we had 2 kids already. So she would work 12-hour shifts 3 days a week. So I was Mr. Mom for 3 days a week. And it was tough. It was, she'd leave at 6:30 a.m. The kids are up, and I had them from 6:30 a.m. until probably 7:30 p.m. because, there's the meetings and stuff. So it was more like a 14-hour shift. So it was Mr. Mom for 3 days a week, Mr. Coffee for the other 4 days a week. We started a product company, right? And with a product company, as you get going, you have to buy more product, more inventory. So for anybody out there starting product companies, it's a longer runway before you have free cash flow to pay yourself.
Sure. So that's very important. You were Mr. Mom. He was working full time. You guys stopped taking he was making a little paycheck, but you were basically not making any money for the company for the first 3+ years.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty crazy. And then during those first 2 years, let's say 2 to 3 years, who was your target customer? How was your main approach to getting sales? Was it phone calls, physically meeting coffee shop owners, going wholesale? How did you do it? Who did you go after? How much money were you spending? I'm sure you were on a shoestring. So just tell me your approach from going from zero to the first, I don't know, $10,000 a month in sales.
Yeah. So if I want to sound smart, I'm going to say, oh yeah, we employed guerrilla marketing, and I'll use some marketing term. The reality is we were clueless, right? And so the best thing we did was use our connections. And it was helpful that Jason grew up in Portland, and he had family in Portland and friends of friends. So he had more connections. It was one of the difficulties, and I only realized this, I don't know, maybe a few years ago, that it was the additional difficulty I had as an immigrant starting a business, because I did not have that. Sorry, somebody's arriving. It's still COVID, working from home.
Good. It's all good. Don't worry.
Hey, I'm in a meeting, okay? Sorry. So as an immigrant, we didn't have any family connections, right? So that start is a little bit harder. You don't have aunts and uncles and your parents here to make introductions. So we used connections, and then we also looked at things that we enjoy doing. So I started racing bikes and getting involved with the bike scene. So I started going to bike shops, which is random, right, for coffee. But that led to some meetings, and I started sponsoring some cycling events.
Now you're talking about bicycles, not motorcycles, right?
Bicycles, yeah, yes, your legs, the motor. It was really guerrilla marketing. We every day was trying something new and throwing shit at the wall and seeing what stuck.
Yeah.
As far as the target, it was everybody, right? Everybody drinks coffee. And so it took us a while to realize we had to figure out a niche. So I think that was a mistake, as well as thinking that our market was everybody. And so if I had to do it again, I would definitely be a little bit more focused and have more of a timeline. We were young and naive and shooting from the hip for a lot of it.
Yeah. So just walking in to anybody who would listen to you and pitching your product.
Yep. Yeah, and so Jason had a connection with a local chain of grocery stores here, New Seasons. They're kind of like the local Whole Foods. Really successful. They had 7 stores at the time. Now they're up to 20. They're now our biggest customer. So they were like the dream account. But yeah, we would walk into a Whole Foods or grocery store and ask for the buyer and hopefully get a card or get a quick meeting. We also started looking at farmers markets. So it took a while, but we got into farmers markets and started spreading the word that way. The other thing that was successful was like talking to our university, to our alma mater. We graduated from the University of Portland, and they had some connections with the food management company that ran the cafeterias there, which is called Bon Appetit, which also runs all the food at Intel and a few other sites. So we started talking to them, and then coincidentally, I was able to get some free press. There's a local newspaper that did an article on us with this idea of like farm direct coffee. And one of the chefs at Intel read it and wanted to bring us in. So that was a huge win for us to be in the, serving coffee to all the Intel engineers. There's like, I don't know if it's 14,000 employees here now, multiple cafeterias. So that was a huge win for us in 2007. And it was really like when we really launched is we got some of these corporate accounts where people are just gushing coffee all day long.
Wow. Wow. That's a great break you got there. And so now what's the next 5 years look like for, or the next 10 years look like for your coffee company? Are you planning on expanding worldwide, or just staying close, keeping it controlled and local? Are you planning on going just across the country of the United States, or what's your plans? Well, obviously everybody has plans, but then COVID-19 comes and destroys everybody's plans. But ideally, what would you like to see?
Yeah, I was hoping you did have some ideas for me. So it took a while to really figure out our purpose, and for me to be okay that I'm not in this game to be the biggest, fastest growing coffee company. When I started in business, it was a really bad word to say that you were a lifestyle company, and people would approach us and be like, "Well, are you doing this to be a real business, or are you going to be a lifestyle company?" And now I'm like, heck yes, I want to be a lifestyle company. Like, why would I run a business and all the stress, risk, and things that we take? Why would I do that if I'm not building a good life, for me and my family and for my staff? So one of our core values is live fully. So, and I'm gonna tell me if I'm too long-winded here.
No, I want to hear it. Take your time.
Yeah, looking forward, the most important thing for us is living by our core values and living, fulfilling our purpose. So the purpose we wrote down for the company is that we serve delicious farm direct coffee and nurture positive relationships locally and globally. So we are already doing that. We have, so all the relationships we have for coffee, it's people that we know. We visit the farms, whether it's in Nicaragua, Guatemala. We know our farming partners really well. And we're nurturing positive relationship with them, and we're nurturing positive relationships with our customers here, our suppliers, and our staff. Now, we're far from perfect. And so this brings me to a term that I really like by Simon Sinek, which is like, he calls it, I think he wrote a book called The Infinite Game of Business. And so we want to keep playing this game, and we're going to continue doing the things that we really well, focusing on high quality coffee, great relationships, and then honing in our niche market. And we believe that by doing these things, we're going to attract the customers that appreciate the things that we do. And that's going to lead to growth. And that's really long-winded. The more direct response is, we'd like to get to about 7 coffee shops in the next 5 years. We are intrigued at trying one internationally if we find the right partner internationally. And but that's the goal is to have 7 coffee shops with the 4. we were getting there, but there wasn't enough contribution margin to hire a GM to run the 4 locations. So we had managers, and then we had our COO running the shops, and it was the model we think is going to work is having 7 coffee shops representing about a quarter of our business, and then continuing to have really strong wholesale, regional, sorry, stumbling here, a wholesale business, and then the other part, which has been advanced faster with COVID, is direct to consumer.
Yeah, a couple things. Number one, I'm sure you've considered it. Franchising is a great model where you don't have to, it's not as capital intensive. And if you ever did decide to go down that route, I've actually franchised a company myself. But besides that, I actually know people in the franchising space who would talk to you, and you get free knowledge on whether or not it's a good idea for you. Now, obviously, people don't like franchising because you kind of relinquish some control, but you're not going, not all your money is going out in expansion, and you can actually control it as much as you want, like the McDonald's or the Subways of the world. That's another option. But one more thing, I had a guy on I forget his name, actually. It's been a while. He was on my podcast recently, about a month ago, and he owns a coffee espresso machine. He does the machinery for coffee machines in Saudi Arabia. And he told me it's booming out there. And he services all the coffees out there, all the coffee companies out there. And, who knows, maybe I'll just create an email and see what happens. I mean, maybe you guys can work together. Yeah. Maybe he needs a new coffee company.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to the franchise model. We actually went pretty far down the line with a Japanese potential partner. Sure. But we decided that we liked a licensing model more. With the franchise, essentially, we have to create the entire playbook. And I believe there needs to be some flexibility for the owner-operator for regional or international cultural differences, right? So if we're going to have a coffee shop in Japan, for example, well, they might not have croissants with their coffee. They might have, rice cakes or something else, right? So I want to dictate. So I'm not, and this is where, the main thing is finding a partner that has the same philosophy towards how they treat people and how they approach business. And then I think that the other details kind of sort out.
Fall into place, yeah.
Fall into place, yes.
Absolutely.
A couple more elements of our business that I are important to talk about that I sometimes forget to talk about is, one, we started doing coffee tours. So you mentioned going to a coffee farm. So I've done 5 tours. I've taken people to Brazil to visit the farm and hang out in Brazil for a week. And we most recently have been doing most of our coffee trips to Guatemala. We skipped last year, but we go during the harvest and we harvest coffee for half a day. We meet the farmers. We do some coffee tastings. We do some tourism because it's a beautiful country, and eat really good food. And the idea is so that and usually half of the people on the trip are employees and part of my staff, part of my team. A lot of people work in coffee, but they've never had a chance to go to a coffee farm. And so we want to create that opportunity for our staff. And then also we also take wholesale customers. So we have people that are either the head of the grocery store or the owner of the coffee shop who's been serving coffee and making money out of coffee, or being in the coffee business for 10, 15 years, but they've never seen a coffee farm. And it's just beautiful to see the connections of, the farmer who's super proud to have their coffee represented in the US, and then have, the coffee shop owner realize how much labor and where exactly they're meet the hands that are harvesting their coffee. It's a really neat thing.
It really is. I imagine that would be a very fun, informative, and, interesting trip, educational, kind of, know where your products come from. I mean, I recently, I went to a farm where, we see where pigs and cows and actually how they're harvested, how they're milked, and how, all the robotics behind it, all the people behind it. And honestly, believe it or not, I'm almost 40 years old. I should have known a lot of it. And I was so shocked at how it's actually done. And and that's a local farm. So coffee, we don't even have any coffee farmers there where I am. So, yeah. So are you going to start opening that to the public? Like having
we have opened it to the public. We're a small company, so we can use help spreading the word. It's a super affordable trip because the airfare to Central America is not that expensive. So it's in the $2,000 region, and it's a full week. Again, great food, and most of the people that go on the trip with us tend to have a little bit of an adventurous spirit. So it's a really fun, well-traveled group that goes. And I'm going to have a meeting with our Guatemalan counterpart middle of July to decide if we're going to bring them back and start planning for February of 2022. My hope is that enough things are getting better with COVID that it's going to be a go, but it's not official yet. We don't have dates yet for the next one.
Well, let me know. That might be something me and my wife would want to do. Is kids come? Can kids come?
Yeah, we recommend the trip for probably 12 and over. I think if you have a well-traveled 10, maybe 8, but there's some hiking, there's some walking, there's some later night meals. So for much younger kids, it wouldn't be very much fun.
So your family farm in Brazil is the majority of where you get your roasters from, but you do supplement them from Nicaragua and other farms across South America and Central America. Is that what you're saying right now?
Yep. Yeah. So what happened was, the name Nossa Familia simply means our family in Portuguese. And the intention was the coffee was always going to be from my family's farm in Brazil. And I don't like fuzzy marketing or embellished marketing. So I if it says our family, I can't buy coffee from people that are not in my family, right? But then a few things happened. One, coffee is a lot like wine, and different regions of the world will produce wine and coffee with different properties and different taste profiles. And I really wanted to start to make sure that my staff was really excited about coffee. And I figured if we had coffee from only one country, it'd be a restaurant that just serves one thing. There's less, I don't know, I wanted a little bit more variety. And through the trade shows and through the coffee industry, as we started growing, we started meeting awesome farmers from other countries who we saw that they matched our philosophy. They had the same zest for life and sustainability and relationships that we had. And so then I started thinking about, the concept of our urban family or our chosen family. And so we decided that we were going to expand, and the idea was we're not going to look at a catalog and pick coffee. We're going to meet people, make sure the philosophy is a match, and then visit their farms and then start doing business with them. So currently 65% of our coffee is still from Brazil, from my family, but we started buying from these other co-ops and farmers that we've met along the way that are awesome people.
Yeah. I can also imagine, and correct me if I'm wrong, since I really don't know, I'm almost positive that just you could have a couple of bad years, or you could have a bad crop, a bad yield, or something happens, God forbid, where you don't have enough product, or you don't have any product to serve your customers here in the States. So you need to have a little bit of a separation in order to compensate in case of an emergency. Is that correct?
With coffee, it would be pretty devastating. Like if there was zero harvest one year. I don't know that that's ever happened. It's more like if there's a drought or a big hailstorm where it can wipe out 30% of the production for the year, which is really hard on the farm. But what you allude to is, with climate change could be a bigger risk. And so having a different supply, now we're seeing like shipping shortages from all over the place. So it definitely helps with risk mitigation business wise.
For sure. And it's a good, I have two questions. Number one is coffee a hardy, resilient plant?
I guess it depends on what we are measuring it.
I mean, versus other
Like, yeah.
plants, is it a sensitive plant, or is it like is it hard to destroy, like hurt? You said if there was a hail damage, a hailstorm, or maybe a freeze over or whatever, it would only do a damage 30%. So, which for me, my mind says it sounds like a pretty hardy plant. It's not very sensitive.
So I'm not on the agriculture side. I didn't go to agronomy school like my uncles and cousins, so I can't describe as much. But for people that have never thought of coffee as a plant, it's a lot like a grapevine. So coffee plant, you plant it 1 year, it'll only produce in the second or third year, so it takes a while to ramp up. So as a farmer, you have to invest that amount of time, but then it will produce, or it'll live for over 100 years. We have a grove at my cousin's farm it's the Centennial Grove that were planted in 1907, and those plants are still producing. With modern agricultural techniques, we're finding that the highest production is between 5 and 15 years. So most of the plants are being renewed after that. Coffee is very weak to frost. So if there's a big frost, it will die. So again, through years of experience, that's why it's planted on hillsides and not in the valleys where the dew would settle and there would be frost. And so there are times when there's, like frost and hailstorms can be pretty localized. So it can wipe out 100% of the production and 30% of the farm, right? So,
Gotcha.
Yeah, but there are pests that attack coffee. 5 years ago, 5 to 3 years ago, there's a big rust leaf is a disease that attacked most of Central America, and that made it really hard for farmers over there. So it's hardy, but it's still an agricultural product, and it's climate change is making it more unpredictable for farmers.
Yeah, I can imagine. And plus, like you said, the whole shipping containers and the whole travel right now, I mean, it's destroying so many industries. Not destroying, but it's like causing so many issues on so many different logistical and so many areas of business that it's screwing up restaurants, coffee houses, Home Depots, all the raw products for anything that we use on a daily basis. It's just really, it's messed up right now. I can't wait for this to be over. And now they're talking about a Delta variant. Can you believe that? I mean, I thought we were almost out of the woods.
Yeah, it's a little scary.
It's weird. I got one last question for you. You mentioned trade shows, and I'm glad you mentioned that because I want to know, in your opinion, how important was it to go to the trade shows, especially early on? Did you feel like that was a big part of your getting into the business fully and immersing yourself into it? And how many trade shows were you going to in your prime?
So for in my experience, and to refrain for giving advice, going to trade shows was important to see what was out there. The part that was not helpful for me in the beginning is I would go to trade shows and come back a little deflated and intimidated, like, oh my God, these companies are clearly super professional. They have so much money. They look so good, it's so polished. I'm never gonna make it in this world, right? So I've since joined the entrepreneur organization. 10 years ago. It's called EO. And one of the best things I learned from being around other entrepreneurs was to shut up that self-limiting thoughts that we had. But anyway, so once we started making it, I considered having a booth at the coffee trade show. And then I realized that was 100% ego driven, because I was like, why would I have a booth at a coffee trade show? Most of the people going are other coffee companies. And most of the people displaying at coffee trade shows are equipment suppliers, bag suppliers, accessories, or the import companies to sell you beans, right? The coffee roasters that were there, maybe they were getting some business from food service people that were visiting, but so I realized we have to be very selective of if we're going to spend money going to a trade show. we were finally going to spend money going to the fancy food show in March of 2020
We're in Vegas?
California. What was that?
Where, in Vegas?
No, I think it's going to be LA.
Oh,
Somewhere in LA. And then that was one of the first shows that got canceled. So I realized, like the fancy food show, yes, that's where people go to meet new brands. And then, so I guess my suggestion is figure out why you're going to go. So even after I had this awareness, I made a point to go to the coffee trade show at least every other year to see industry trends. There's some serendipity that happens with people you meet, but industry trends, learning, those are the main reasons that I went to them.
okay, great. Well, I want to just say thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. And Augusto, it was nice learning about your coffee business. Nossa Familia Coffee. I wish you nothing but blessings in the future, and let's stay in touch.
Sounds good. And then send me your address via email so I can send you a little sample.
All right, definitely. I appreciate it.
All right.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Later. Bye.